Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging through one of the biggest corporate scandals of the 90s. And it's a story that proves even a, kind of boring industry like garbage collection can hide some absolutely explosive secrets.
So we're talking about Waste Management, a company whose business seems pretty simple, right? They haul our garbage. But for 5 straight years, they were also hauling in phantom profits, building an empire not on solid ground, but on a literal landfill of lies.
$1.7 billion. Let that sink in for a second. That's the number at the heart of this entire story. And this wasn't real money. It was a number completely made up through some clever accounting, all to mislead investors, Wall Street, and, well, everyone.
And that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? And the wildest part is how they did it. It wasn't some super complex high-tech scheme. Nope. The fraud was rooted in the very things they used every single day: their garbage trucks, their equipment, and their landfills. So let's break down exactly how they pulled this off.
See, this wasn't just one bad decision. It was a whole playbook of deceptive tricks. It was a systematic year-after-year effort to make expenses just disappear and make profits look way bigger than they actually were. Okay, so first, we need to quickly get our heads around a core accounting concept. It's called depreciation. Think of it like this. When a company buys a big, expensive truck, it doesn't just write off the entire cost as an expense in year one. That wouldn't make sense. Instead, it spreads that cost out over the truck's useful life. And that annual cost, that's your depreciation expense.
And this is where Waste Management played its biggest trick. They basically just decided their garbage trucks and other gear would last longer. So instead of depreciating a truck over its real 15-year life, they'd stretch it to 18, maybe 20 years. That simple change on a spreadsheet drastically lowered their annual expenses, which, like magic, made the reported profits shoot way up.
Oh, but they didn't stop with the trucks. Not even close. They also just refused to record the costs for closing down full landfills. They took regular, everyday operating costs and wrongly labeled them as long-term assets. And they used the profits from selling off parts of their business to paper over the losses in their main operations. It was a full-on assault on financial reality.
And this chart, this really shows you the result of their little playbook. The gap between what they actually made and what they told the world they made just got wider and wider, until it became this staggering $1.7 billion chasm between fact and fiction.
So the big question is why? Why go to all this trouble? Why build a massive company on such a shaky foundation? Well, the answer, as it so often is, really comes down to 2 things: pressure and pure greed. You see, the company had grown into this absolute giant by just buying up smaller competitors left and right. But by the 90s, that easy growth was slowing down. Competition was getting fierce, and keeping those profits climbing every single quarter was becoming a huge, huge challenge. And Wall Street demands constant growth. They were feeling that pressure big time.
But let's be real, this wasn't just about corporate pride. The executives at the top, led by their CEO, Dean Buntrock, had massive personal incentives tied to the company's stock price. By keeping the profits artificially high, they kept the stock price up, which made their own stock options worth an absolute fortune. They were literally enriching themselves with money that didn't exist.
A fraud this big creates a lot of internal pressure. You just can't keep a lie of this magnitude under wraps forever. Eventually, that dam was going to break, and all that garbage was going to come spilling out. So this whole thing kicked off in 1992 and went on for 5 long years. The real turning point came in 97 when a brand new CEO took over and basically refused to sign off on these cooked books. That internal pushback is what finally triggered an official investigation by the SEC, which led to the bombshell announcement in 1998. The company came clean and admitted its profits had been overstated by $1.7 billion. And when the truth finally got out, the fallout was swift and it was severe. It sent shockwaves not just through the company, but through the entire accounting world. Now, here's a key player we have to talk about: the company's auditor, a firm called Arthur Andersen. These were the folks who were supposed to be the independent watchdogs, right? Their whole job was to make sure the books were accurate. But instead of flagging the fraud, the SEC found that they actually signed off on it year after year.
So what happened to everyone? Well, the consequences were pretty significant. Waste Management had to do what was at the time the largest earnings restatement in history.
Arthur Andersen got hit with a massive fine and was even barred from certain types of work. And the executives who ran the whole scheme fired, and they had to pay personal fines. And this is why this all matters so much. Beyond just this one company, the waste management scandal was a massive red flag. It exposed these deep systemic problems with how companies were run and how auditors were, well, not doing their jobs. This was the warm-up act for the absolute chaos that would come just a few years later with the collapse of Enron, a company, by the way, that was also audited by Arthur Andersen. It was a huge wake-up call that led to major reforms. So fast forward to today, and you'll see waste management heavily promoting all of its recycling programs and green initiatives. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Can a pivot to sustainability and environmental responsibility really wash away the stain of a past built on a billion-dollar lie? Can a company ever truly, fully clean up that kind of mess? It's a tough question.